The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned into the PIAA Podcast, College Edition, featuring Tristan Warner, Mason Beckman, and Super Rob Waltko. PIAA Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Pennsylvania wrestling fans, you are now dialed into the PIAA Wrestling Podcast College Edition. I'm your co-host, Tristan Warner, joined as always by Rob Waltko. This is Season 3, Episode 5. Got some good matches and some highlights from the weekend to jump into here before we preview this upcoming weekend. Rob, good to have you back. Lots of good wrestling this weekend and lots of good wrestling coming up to preview here.
Yeah, definitely. It's starting to heat up. Had some nice duels from some of our Pennsylvania teams, Penn State, Pitt, Edinboro had a nice duel meet. And then the Journeymen were kind of some of the highlights that I saw. You know, jumping into it, like let's jump into that Edinboro Wisconsin match. When Wisconsin over Edinboro 28-15. Edinboro, they've made big strides. I'm really impressed by these guys and Coach Hill. They had a nice win at 125. Rodriguez won that match. He was 13-18 coming in on the year and is 4-0 on this year versus some pretty tough competition. Pappas with a nice win. Jordan Oliver looked tough. Mulligan lost one that I thought he probably should have won. But Spalding fought Hilger hard too. I mean, Edinboro is really, really improved. Are you seeing the same thing as me? Are these guys just a complete 180 from what they were last year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of people probably looked at this team on paper and looked at them as, you know, kind of maybe a bottom feeder of the conference, and that maybe was the case whenever the program changed hands a few years ago and, you know, a couple of big-name guys left. But, you know, Matt Hill, he's done wonders already. You look at some of these guys. He scooped up a lot of these gritty PIAA kids. As you touched on last week, Rob, this duel was actually held at Sagertown High School, which is probably not too far from Edinboro. It's kind of a AA, you know, well-known school for producing AA talent. And they've got 3 or 4 guys on their team from there alone, and they've got some tough kids from New York. You know, they're kind of scraping the barrel and picking up these gritty kids that are really seem to be working hard and improving. So Matt Hill has done a lot with the program already in just a short time, and yeah, I think it's already showing here. 28-15 against Wisconsin, who's one of the top teams. That's no slouch in the result there.
No, I couldn't agree more. They've done a really good job. You know, there was a mass exodus there last year. I don't know how much of it was Hill's fault or just people wanted a fresh start, but he's had them bounce back really fast, so hats off to him. You know, another individual result, not a team result, but AC Headley with a nice win over Will Lewan, who's a highly touted freshman from Michigan. Headley's up to 157. He looks big. Maybe not super ripped, but plenty of energy, and he's wrestling hard. And really, that's the highlight here is he wrestled hard. He fought off a couple of takedowns, a bear hug, and a spin behind to really win that match. And you know, Coleman Scott's got it going on down there. Pennsylvania guy, you know, he's got Headley wrestling hard, so hats off to him. I
gotta jump in. I think I'm going to use that from now on. Anytime I see somebody who's not the most shredded physique, I'm just going to say, you know, you look like you got a lot of energy. I think that's what I'm going to use from now on. That was a nice way to put that, Rob.
Yeah, man. I mean, who hasn't cut some weight? But he showed it in that 7 minutes, and
you look healthy. You look like you got some energy out there.
And I'm not one to talk, but he looked a little soft. But he's I mean, that's a huge win. So the great win for AC.
Yeah, I just looking at the results, seeing that. First of all, you know, I realized Headley was a senior now, but I didn't realize he had gone up so much in weight. You know, he was a 33, 41-pounder for all his first 4 years of his career, and he had solid results, but maybe not ever reached the level that his, you know, high school pedigree would allude to. But, you know, jumping up a couple weights, that may have been the difference for him as, you know, he picks up a win over Luwan, who at the time, I know he came in ranked as high as top 5 in some polls as a freshman. And, you know, now with this week's rankings, Headley cracks the top 20. So, you know, you'd have to think he's the starter there for North Carolina, and he's cracking the rankings with a big top 20 win there.
No, I definitely agree. Tristan, what did you see Saturday? I know we had some confusion about the Journeyman tournament. They had duels Saturday, which weren't as deep as in the years past, I don't think, from a team perspective. But then they had the individual event on Sunday. But let's start with the duels. Did anything catch your eye?
Yeah, there was quite a few good matches that happened over the weekend at this journeyman tournament, both in the dual section and in the individual tournament. Couple PA guys that we kind of previewed and touched on that we wanted to keep our eye out, just because they're guys that had redshirted last year, and we were excited to see them get in the lineup for the first time. One of those guys was Justin McCoy, the Chestnut Ridge product. He had a huge redshirt year, went I want to say 25 or 28-3. He had a really solid redshirt year, did really well at the National Collegiate Open. He finally got to put on the Cavalier singlet and get out there in some dual meets. And, he had a monster win in his first match, beating Ja'Cory Teamer from Arizona State. I don't know, a lot of people saw that one coming. Teamer, also a freshman, worth mentioning, but he's a guy who had a win over Sammy Sasso last year down at 49. So he came in highly touted, and probably more so than McCoy. He was more of a nationally known recruit, I would say. So that was definitely a big win. And I don't know to what degree Teamer is now hurt, but it seems like McCoy put the beating on him, and then Teamer went on to forfeit his next match. Rob, I don't know if you have any details about that, but McCoy, it looks like he beat him on the mat, and he beat him up too. Yeah,
he looked a little gimpy the second half of the match. I mean, I'm going to call a spade. Sometimes you really don't know if that's a guy that's maybe not going his way, so he starts limping around or what. But he sat out the next match, and I guess the word out of Arizona State is he did suffer, I don't know how serious of an injury, but an injury. But I don't want to take anything away from McCoy. He looked great, and he really out-hustled him out there. So hats off to him. Great win for Justin.
Yeah, and a couple other PA boys also worth mentioning that were actually not on the mat were Cam Coy, Penn Trafford product, and Sammy Krivas out of Hempfield, two Pittsburgh kids that are big-time, strongholds in the UVA lineup. Neither one of those guys competed this weekend, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, and that's Spencer getting a pin over Maruka. I wonder if he took that spot from Krivas maybe. It's possible, but we'll see. The Pitt Panthers versus Campbell on Saturday. Excellent job by Coach Gavin and his crew, winning 8 out of 10 matches. I don't know where to start, honestly. I mean, Mickey gets down 2-0 to Gonzer and really kind of suffocates him the rest of the match, winning 6-0. Cole Matthews with a quick pin over Heil. That was awesome. Wenzel, major decision, Perez. Meach Thomas over Heino, 10-3. I mean, Demetrius looked freaking awesome. He looked explosive, and he looked confident. He looked like a different guy. Those were the real positives. I mean, even 25, Newell lost a close one to a national qualifier, but it was back and forth. It was a really entertaining match. Nino was really kind of the negative part of the dual meet, where he was winning, went for a cradle, got stuck on his back, and couldn't come back. He had his chances, but the Campbell kids certainly held him off and got a late takedown to win. So I didn't want to say hold him off, but what were your impressions of that match? And there was a lot to be happy about, but the Nino one, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I think, Andrew Morgan from Campbell is no slouch either. He was at the national tournament. I think he won a few matches. So, he's wrestling with a former teammate of mine at Cumberland Valley. Mike Evans is one of their coaches, who was a 3-time All-American at Iowa. So, he's wrestling with that dude in every day in the room. He's definitely gotten better. I'm sure that's true. I think Nino is still probably on a different level than him. I think he probably had one bad opening match. Rob, I think you even mentioned, I don't know if you just said this or not, but that's his first loss in his college career that wasn't to an All-American. Is that correct?
Yeah, I double-checked. I didn't look at his redshirt year, but last year everyone that beat him either was or became an All-American. So, he's been a model of consistency, and I don't really think there's any reason to panic. He's going to be fine.
Exactly, and I don't know if that speaks more to Nino, or also maybe you speak to Andrew Morgan. Maybe he's going to be destined for greatness now. He's going to become an All-American for sure this year. It might be some sort of curse there or something. I don't know what you would call it. But I guess another question I would have, just from looking at the results here, Pitt did outstanding. Would you say Lewis Newell's the guy at 125 now? I know we talked a lot in our preview. It looked like Fenton from the Ohio kid was the one who maybe still had the nod, but would you say Newell's going to be the guy now?
If I had to guess, for now, yeah. I think he was in the pre-match notes for the Ohio State duel this weekend. Newell, I believe, was the highest placer at Michigan State. Him and Fenton went second and third. Actually, I can't remember who placed, but they lost to the same kid. But, he looked good. He really did. He got the first takedown. He kind of had a lapse in the second period where it looked like he was going to fall apart, and then he stormed back and almost got the win. So I don't want to say he has the hot hand because he lost, but I certainly would keep him in there.
Yeah, overall, really good performance from Pitt. Wenzel was extremely impressive as well. He's a guy that we talked about as a big-time recruit, and, it looks like he shook off some injuries his first couple years in college, but he looks like he's healthy now, and, I thought him and Perez would be a really good match. Perez is a tough kid that gets better every single year, and Wenzel took it to him 9-1, so impressive stuff there. A couple of the Pitt guys that we had kind of a question mark hovering over their name, I think they really answered the call here in this first dual meet.
No, I think so as well, and they face Ohio State on Friday, and I think they can be competitive in that match. They need a lot of breaks to win it, but the way I see it, that's definitely winnable, and that would be a huge, huge win for that program.
Let's jump into Drexel over the weekend. They got 2 wins, a close one, 18-15 over SIU Edwardsville, and then they got a pretty lopsided win over West Liberty, which is a Division II program. Some solid results. Ebed Jarrell had a pretty tough match against SIU Edwardsville, 7-5 overtime win over Chase Deal. That was probably the most head-scratching result there for me. Anthony Walters, the PA boy, ended up losing 10-4 to Ryan Yarnell. I'm not too familiar with him. So, Walters was a guy, Rob, that you talked about in your preview that had a rough freshman go, kind of thrown to the wolves. But, we were looking for big things from him this year as he was a 3-time PIAA state finalist. So hopefully he's still shaking off that rust there at 84 for Drexel. And then the other thing I noticed was at 25, I had previewed that Chase Shields, a local Bishop McDevitt guy, District 3 here, would be the starting lineup. WrestleStat had him listed as the starter, but looks like the Antonio Menino, he's a Jersey guy, ended up getting the nod instead. So that's something to keep an eye on, but it looks like for now, Menino may be the guy at 25. Anything else you saw in the either Drexel dual meet that caught your eye?
No, I think those are both duels that you expect them to win, so the jury's out on the Dragons. Let's jump into Journeyman Part 2, the individual tournament. There wasn't a whole lot of action at 125 for Pennsylvania natives. Luke Warner actually wrestled up in Binghamton. He elected not to wrestle here. DJ Fellman, quite a surprising day for him. He ended up going 0-4. A lot of close losses, but guys you figured he would beat or at least be competitive with and maybe get a win or two. So, maybe not the best start to the year for him, but I think he'll battle back. Might be a weight thing. He started last year at 141 and made his way down. Aragona ended up third, out of Rutgers. He wrestled Chad Red to a decision. No Kyle Shoup, though. I have no idea why he didn't wrestle. I'm sure there's a legitimate reason why. My thought might be, does he want to keep Demas, Red, all these guys on their toes to not feel him on top? Do you think that's possible, Tristan? And even if we're just grasping at straws here, if you were his coach, if you were Moore and company, would you consider maybe doing that?
It's tough to say. I think of guys from Lock Haven and Scott Moore and, all the guys from Lock Haven that we've talked to and talked about as being really hard-nosed dudes. They're always up for a challenge. I wouldn't really think of them as being the type of guys that would purposely duck competition for any kind of reason. I almost feel like they're the opposite. They would almost seek it out more so to prove themselves. But, then again, we've also talked about things like Cole Matthews, week 1, wrestling in the freshman-sophomore division of the Michigan State Open. There might be some strategy or some mental game behind that where coaches are trying to kind of, either rest guys or maybe just try to keep their confidence high. It's a very long wrestling season. College season just goes on for what feels like forever, and you have your ups and downs. Everybody does. So, it could be a strategic move there to try to just conserve him a little bit, or he might have just got dinged up in practice or something, or a wrestle off, We don't really know.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I might be looking into it too much. It could just be, like you said, he sprained his ankle slightly and they didn't want to rush him out there, but who really knows? 49, Jimmy Hoffman from Lehigh ended up the runner-up. He got a win over Josh Maruka. Maruka lost to Chris Edens, 2-time Division II national champ from UPJ, so a rough weekend for Maruka, but I bet he regroups here soon. 2 PA guys in the finals at 57. Josh Humphreys over Clucker. Clucker looked awesome in pool play. He beat Justin Thomas 13-8. It was a killer match, man. Thomas was round of 12 last year. He's very, very good. Clucker scored 10 points in the first period. Got a takedown off a really nice reshot, a few turns, got reversed, then reversed them back. Clucker looked awesome. I got a little bit of Richard Perry or not Richard Perry, Ronnie
Perry.
Yeah, sorry. Richard Perry, obviously the stud out of Bloomsburg. But, Ronnie Perry out of him, looking better than ever. Was he always just this tough on top? Tristan, you know him better than I do.
Honestly, I didn't think so. I watched him in high school coming up, and he didn't have any kind of high school career that would speak to the success he's having in college. He put together a pretty nice state tournament, I would say, his senior year. Might have ended up placing, kind of snuck into the medal rounds, and I think he even got a couple pins, maybe like headlocks or something. But I don't think very many people saw this coming. I think he was a walk-on to college, and I actually talked to his brother today, Austin, who I coach at Shippensburg, and he just said how proud he is of just how much hard work he's put in and where it's really taken him. So, I think this is really just the culmination of hard work, great workout partners, and really good coaching.
Yeah, he looked unbelievable on top in that first period versus Thomas, so hats off to him. Tristan, I think some of the real meat and potatoes came in at 65 and 74 with a bunch of All-Americans wrestling there. What were your thoughts and impressions on watching those matches? Yeah,
so actually 2 matches that we talked about in the preview that we said we would most likely see, although we weren't really sure based on our naivety to the format of the tournament. But Isaiah White from Nebraska and Josh Shields from Arizona State. Shields, the PA guy from Franklin Regional. A rematch of the NCAA 5th place match last year, which was narrowly won by White. Looks like White got him again this time, 7-1. So he had a 6-point move pretty early on. Didn't really seem like Shields could come back from that. But if I'm being honest, Rob, you'd probably agree. When you go up by 6 points in a college match, when you're neck and neck with a guy of that caliber, it's pretty tough to come back. So it looks like he may have just gotten kind of caught. And, he'll look to see White again later in the season. And then at 174, another match we talked about we'd be anticipating was Jordan Cutler from Lehigh against Mikey Labriola. He's a Bethlehem Catholic product who now wrestles for Nebraska. 2 returning All-Americans going at it there. And Jordan Cutler comes out on top, 4-1. So, kind of similar to what we expected, a low-scoring, stingy match between 2 really strong, kind of low-scoring guys. Not a ton of offense, but these guys are both going to be really tough to beat. The 74-pound weight class has been kind of vacated by guys taking Olympic red shirts. Zahid moved up, McFadden moved down. So, those guys could be 2-3 in the country right now.
Yeah, no, I like your assessment on both of those weights. It was kind of a mirror of itself. Shields got down early, as did Labriola, and neither could really get to the other guy's legs. But, Isaiah White, his movement was really good. He did a good job controlling space, like pushing off on Shields, and Shields just couldn't get his hands on him. And then Cutler's just a freaking bull. He spent a lot of time riding Labriola, but, Cutler's got to be one of the strongest guys pound for pound in the country. And that's saying something when you can muscle Mikey Labriola, because that kid's an animal too. 84, Weiler got a win over Hazel. Venz ended up beating both of them up. I was hoping one of them would be able to compete with him, but Venz ended up pushing Zahid, so he's a force. And then Weiler got a nice win over Orndorff at the end of the day. Woodley, my guy, lost close to Pagano in a tight match, and then Jacobson got hurt and pulled out. Not sure how serious that is, but I guess we'll see. And then heavyweight, Jordan Wood, our guy, our friend of the program, took a loss to Orndorff in his pull, and I was kind of like, man, that's kind of a crappy loss. Then Orndorff went out there and beat up Tanner Hall, rather. So maybe not as bad of a loss. Orndorff had a heck of a weekend. These big boys, did you see anything that really caught your eye, Tristan?
I would say just that result alone. Orndorff, he's only a sophomore, too, not to mention. Tanner Hall, like we talked about, has been around for a long time. I think he's older than me. So, for him to get knocked off, maybe especially coming off not wrestling last year, shaking the cobwebs out, wouldn't be a huge shock. But Jordan Wood, in my mind, was the clear number 3 guy at this weight class. So I would say that was a bit of a head scratcher, but, it's not any disrespect to Orndorff. I think he's for real. I think those 2 wins alone would solidify him as a top 5 guy. And I see he is ranked as high as 4th now on Intermat's poll at least. So that was probably the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, he did an awesome job this weekend. Penn State with a big 45-0 win. Anything catch you off guard there, Tristan? It looked like pretty much chalk to me.
I saw a couple things that were interesting. Number one, I really thought Verclaren was solidified as the starter at 49. Apparently not the case. Luke Gardner actually got the nod, got a narrow decision win there. And at 197, Kyle Cannell was really the biggest one that I think, just from a viewer standpoint of wanting to gauge where he's at. Obviously coming off of a huge performance at NCAAs 2 years ago and then taking a year off and then, making the transition over to Penn State. He did get a win, but it was a close one, 4-3 over, is it Jake Kozer? Jake Kozer or Kyle Kozer? I always get them mixed up. Jake Kozer, I think, from Navy. He's from Northern, right down the road from me here in District 3. He was a really tough guy coming out of high school, but he went 1 year to the prep school, and then this was his first ever college dual meet. So for him to go out there and wreck Hall and lose just a 1-point match to Cannell, I don't know if that speaks more volumes for where Kozer is already at as a freshman. I mean, I knew he had the talent, but it could also speak to maybe Cannell isn't quite where he needs to be yet. I really don't know. Time will tell as the season goes on, I guess. Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. I mean, Penn State has their hammers, but I think 25, 49, 97, we don't know what to expect. 57, Burgee, assuming he comes back, I mean, a bit of a question mark, even if he comes back healthy, just because he didn't really do a lot at 49 last year, though a lot of that was due to weight cut. And then, I mean, there's still some holes in their lineup, or what seemingly are holes, but they always seem to reload. So it'll be interesting to watch their progress throughout the year. Ohio State, a couple Pennsylvania boys there. You had Luke Pletcher win an overtime match over Real Woods. Awesome match. That Woods kid's a stud. He has really good position, and it is just really solid. He's going to be a tough out for anyone. And then Sasso with a 3-1 win over Vandermeer. Couldn't get to the kid's legs, really controlled the position. A lot of the match was the kid getting in, being on his belly, stretched out, and Sasso trying to spin behind. But I think a lot of people expected him to score a lot more, kind of a victim of his own success from 2 weeks ago. Thoughts on that? I mean, both those matches a little closer than I expected, but I think, a win's a win to some degree. Right, Tristan? Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially against really tough guys. Like Real Woods, like I talked about last week, is ranked low, maybe lower than he should be just because he's a freshman. And, most of the results they have to rank him off so far are based on his redshirt season, which, there's some credence to him, obviously, but it's a different season when you get out there and you're in the lineup and you're not a redshirt anymore. So I think it's a matter of time before Woods starts popping off some big wins and gets really high into the rankings. But, I mean, I think his caliber is way higher than whatever his 15th ranking or whatever he was on Flow when we talked about him last week. But Pletcher is a guy that wins close matches either way. So, I'm not surprised to see that result. I could see that match being a very tightly contested one for the rest of this season if these guys keep seeing each other. And then Sasso, not surprising that he wins. Maybe it's surprising that it was such a close match, especially after he just tore people apart at the Michigan State Open. I know, Rob, those who have been playing the college fantasy wrestling, Sasso, I think, was one of the leading scorers after week 1. And so I think people were expecting him to put a lot of points up on the board. But, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's a style matchup. Sometimes it's just how you feel. He's also on a 1-hour weigh-in now. It's a little different than being in an open tournament. So I don't know if weight's an issue for him or not, but it's always a little different when you wrestle in that 1-hour weigh-in in a dual meet.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't know. It was just weird. He just couldn't get to the legs, and the kid was just real clingy, but I don't see much reason to be concerned. Sasso's going to be just fine. Another duel of the week coming up, though. Pitt, like I said before, they're wrestling Ohio State. I think this duel is winnable. I 100% think Pitt can win this duel. They need everything to go their way, but it's not out of the question they could win it. Some of the matches right away that I like, 33 got Quint Kinner versus Mickey Philippi. That was a close match at the Michigan State Open. Pletcher versus Matthews at 41. Sasso versus Kemerer, I think that's a match Ohio State's probably looking at bonus points, but we'll see what Kemerer can do. And 57, Cleary was the guy last week for Pitt or for Ohio State, but didn't look great versus Stanford. And Romani's he's funky and he's a pinner. Who do you like in these early matches, Tristan?
There's a lot of good storylines coming into this one. I mean, I like Kinner's a good young guy from Jersey going against Mickey, so that's the border war right there. And now the other border, PA Ohio, so that'll be interesting. I think Mickey wins it. I think Kinner's tough though. And then 41 is kind of a tale of veteran versus new guy. Luke Pletcher obviously solidified himself as the top guy, a veteran, and Cole Matthews is the new, young, shiny new toy at the weight class. We'll kind of see how that shakes out. But, I mean, Cole looked awesome in his debut in dual meet, getting a first-period pin over Josh Heil, who's a national qualifier for Campbell. So we'll see if he can keep that momentum going. But Pletcher is going to be really hard for him to score on, so we'll see. And then, I think Sasso takes that 49 match pretty easily. And 57, I'm confused as to who Ohio State plans to send out. I know they have a couple guys in contention. I mean, I thought Keyshawn Hayes would kind of be the go-to guy just from, he's had success at 49 and at 57, going back and forth. And Maddox and Cleary are young guys, but Maddox hasn't looked like he's fit the bill so far just from how high of a recruit he was coming out. He is very young, but I just thought Hayes was kind of the guy for sure. But it looks like they do have a question mark there. Either way, Taylor Bermani is going to be tough for any one of those three guys to beat. He's the guy that's been around forever, and he's always right on the cusp of All-American status. So I would have to say that Pitt's probably going to be favored in that weight class. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a weight they need to win. 65, 84 heavyweight, I think those are weights they need to win. You got Ethan Smith, who's really been struggling for Ohio State, versus Wenzel, who's on a bit of a heater. Hoffman, it looks like he's going to be the guy at 84 versus Nino. I think Nino's going to come out with bad intentions and look to score some bonus in that match. And then heavyweight, Singletary didn't wrestle last week. Even if he does, I think Demetrius has a real shot. I don't know. I like Penn State or Ohio State to win those three matches, or Pitt to win those three matches versus Ohio State. Man, my brain is not working today. Sorry, guys. But do you see bonus opportunities in those matches, or do you think there are three decisions?
I don't know. I would have said that Wenzel and Quentin Perez from Campbell would have been a really close match, but he went out and won 9-1. So at this point, honestly, I wouldn't count Wenzel out. I don't know. Ethan Smith is a tough guy too. I mean, anyone who wrestles for Ohio State is tough, but I would have to definitely at least think Wenzel's favored to win at least by a decision. And then at 84, I'm interested to see who Ohio State throws out. Rob, you sound to be pretty confident that Hoffman will be the guy. It looks like Steiner wrestled against Stanford. And like we talked about, Hoffman's been struggling a little bit in opens, and he lost his wrestle-off. So, if he goes out there, Nino is coming off of a tough loss, but I think there's a little extra storyline behind that match, too. I think Nino and Hoffman came out right around the same year, coming out of high school. They were right around the same weight class. They're both big-time PA recruits, so that's an interesting match as well. I definitely think Nino is favored against either guy, but I don't know. We'll see if Hoffman shows up, and if he does, we'll see which Hoffman shows up, I guess.
Yeah, no, moving ahead, we have Oklahoma State wrestles Drexel and Lehigh this week. From an Oklahoma State Drexel perspective, 165 is probably the marquee match. You got Travis Whitlake, big-time recruit from Oregon versus Ebed Jarrell. We'll see if the young buck can contend with the old vet. Bucknell, Northern Illinois, and Iowa State might get this chance to see Hartman versus Carr. But Carr didn't compete at the Harold Nichols Open. Wonder if he's a little bit dinged up. But kind of same situation, though. I mean, they're the same year. I think they're wrestling the Dapper Dan, but Hartman has a little bit more experience. But this Oklahoma State Lehigh duel, this could be pretty fun. 149 right away. You got Jimmy Hoffman, who's knocking at the door, wrestling Buluwan. That's a competitive match, I think. Gallick and Meyer are both about 500 for Lehigh. We'll see who goes there. I mean, whoever competes there is going to wrestle Whitlake, who's a stud. And then 74, you got JoJo Smith and Jordan Cutler. Cutler has at least one win over him in the past. What do you see in those first couple of matches, Tristan? Are there any other matches in that dual meet that catch your eye?
Yeah, I think Jimmy Hoffman's a guy that's made leaps and bounds over this last summer. He has a really good freestyle summer, and then he's been off to a pretty strong start in the early going here. So him against Buluwan, something that maybe last year people would have looked at and said that's an easy win for Oklahoma State. I think that's kind of a toss-up match at this point. And then 65, I would have been interested to see if Edmund Ruth would contend for that spot. We've been talking about him a little bit as somebody that maybe could emerge, especially if we saw some really good results from the open tournaments, if he could maybe slide in and start as a true freshman. But it did look like he got hurt over the weekend. I'm not sure the severity of it, but I would say it's probably likely that we're not going to see him in the Lehigh singlet, at least for now. So, I would think Whitlake's going to have to be favored there in that match against either one of those guys. And Smith Cutler, I mean, those guys are kind of similar. They're both veteran guys, 5th, 6th year seniors, been around for a long time, top 5 guys. Could really go either way. 184 is one that I'd really like to talk about. That's 2 PA boys right there scrapping it out. Dakota Gear returning All-American for Oklahoma State, and he's going to be taking on Chris Weiler from Lehigh, who's a local guy from me here from Shippensburg, as I talked about last week, and Wyoming Seminary product. He bounced back and forth weights from 84 to 97 for Lehigh last year, had a lot of solid wins, just didn't end up getting the nod to start, but probably would have been an NCAA qualifier maybe at either weight. So, he's a good guy, and he had a good weekend this past weekend at the Journeyman. I think his only loss was to Taylor Venz. So that could be a toss-up. That's one that if, gear doesn't show up and he's not, if he's not in first gear, should we say, to make a lame joke there, Weiler could pick that one off. I would not be at all surprised to see that.
Yeah, but if Dakota has one more gear than Weiler, it could be busted open pretty quick. They're on a travel weekend, though, so in all seriousness, multiple weigh-ins could be tough. I favor Dakota pretty heavily in that match, but Weiler's not a chump. You look at 97, is Jacobson out? If he is, who do they throw out there? But it should be a competitive duel. I feel like these guys always wrestle tough. You have the West Point Dark Knight Open, where Penn State and Bloomsburg will be competing against the likes of Army West Point, who's really tough. They just beat Illinois and almost beat Wisconsin. Central Michigan, Hofstra, Indiana, Maryland, Michigan. We'll talk more about that one next week once we figure out who shows up and who wrestles where. George Mason versus Clarion. We have DeBlasi at 149 versus Brock Zackrell. DeBlasi was a national qualifier last year at 165. He's down to 49. And Brock's, of course, up from 141 from a few years ago. Do you think there's going to be a size advantage there, Tristan? Or do you think, at this point, they've probably evened out?
I'd say they've probably evened out by this point. But I don't know. You never know. Coming down from that much weight, that's a big jump. I know I went from 74 to 65 to 57. So people at one point maybe would have said that I had a big size advantage at 57, but I really just lost like a ton of baby fat and just looked like a Skeletor. So I really didn't feel like I was that big at 57. So I don't know.
It's really is hard to tell unless you're around the guys, how much weight they're cutting or what they look like. But, Beasley and their staff, they're pretty smart, so they probably have them down to the right weight. Virginia Tech will also wrestle Ohio State. 41-49. I feel like we're going to talk about Pletcher and Sasso a lot, but they're going to wrestle those Moore boys from St. Paris Graham. And then Hoffman, if he's back, he's going to wrestle Hunter Bolin, who's made big jumps. So it could be a rough weekend for Hoffman if he gets both duels, or it could be a big weekend. He comes out and he gets a win versus one of these guys and shows that he's the man. Iowa Hawkeyes, a.k.a. Pennsylvania Midwest, they're going to wrestle UTC 2 p.m. on Sunday. We don't want to talk too much about that because we're not sure who's going to go where or what's going on. But Tristan, before I get on the phone with Mike Kemerer, and I know you have to run, anything that really you want to talk about this weekend or about last weekend before I get on the phone with them?
I think the Army West Point, the Black Knight Open, will be interesting to see where some of these, especially these Penn State guys, shake out. Guys like Brody Teskey, guys like Kyle Cannell that we've talked about who have a lot of talent, a lot of upside. Maybe they have a little bit different story leading into the season. In Cannell's case, he's kind of out to prove this year that he's not a fluke, I guess you would say. And then guys like Brody Teskey, who came in as a big recruit and didn't quite have the redshirt campaign that he wanted. People may have turned on him a little bit, or they don't really have him ranked in the top 20. I think it's a big statement tournament for Penn State. You obviously have your guys like Hall and Chenzo that everybody knows about, but there's definitely some young guys in that lineup, and there's also things like 149 where Verclearen and Luke Gardner look to be having somewhat of a position battle. So I think that's an interesting tournament to keep your eye on, and there's some tough teams there. Maryland, Michigan, Indiana has some tough guys. Central Michigan, Army. So I think that's a tournament that will be interesting to recap next week.
Yeah, I agree. 125, I think especially. Army's not bad there. Bloomsburg, obviously Girard's not there, but that kid's an absolute animal. You got Hildenbrand from Central Michigan, Ryder from Hofstra, Hudkins from Indiana, who's a Northern Illinois transfer. Teskey's going to have his hands full to see, where he stands with these guys. It's just a shame that Girard's not in that weight class because that would really make it loaded. But, what do you think about me getting on the phone with Mike?
Yeah, we're excited to have Mike Kemerer on. He's already a two-time All-American for Iowa. He's making a big jump up to 174 this year. He is, I guess, Rob, I'm sure you're going to get into it in your phone call, but I guess he's a fifth-year senior, but he's pending a sixth year of eligibility, so we might see him again next year. But, he's a Franklin Regional product out of Pittsburgh, and he's one of the many PA pipeliners over to Iowa. So what do you say we dial him up and get him on here?
Yeah, let's do it, man. All right, Pennsylvania wrestling fans, we are fortunate to have Michael Kemerer, 174-pounder for the University of Iowa on the line. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
So first question before we get started, actually, I was going to intro you as a redshirt junior, but I don't know if that is appropriate. Are you a junior, senior? Like, how does that work with your title right now?
Yeah, so technically this year I'm a redshirt senior. It's my 5th year here, but the plan is obviously missing last year to apply for that medical hardship or medical redshirt after the season. So basically I have to wait till after the season until I go through the whole process. So technically I am a senior, but I mean, from what I've heard, it should be pretty, pretty good shot at getting it, real good shot at getting it from what I'm hearing. But yeah, right now I'm technically a senior.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Thanks for clearing that up. So Michael, back to, a little bit more pressing news, more so than your eligibility. I think everyone knows you'll get that 6th year, or hopes at least. But you were the first guy in PA in a long time, since maybe Ray Brinzer and Rich Catalano, some guys from North Allegheny, where I'm from, to go to Iowa, and that set a bit of a trend. You have Lee, Young, DeSanto, Murin, guys that are Pennsylvania guys over there in Iowa now. Did it feel weird taking that plunge and being the first one to really do that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was a little bit different just because going out there weren't guys that I really knew previously, so going out and visiting and stuff, it was kind of new to me. But at the same time, it was something that I always thought about Iowa. Everyone always thought about Iowa wrestling, and it was something that I was super interested in. And then actually going through the process, it's funny. Caleb Young and I joke around because he actually committed as a junior a couple weeks before I committed as a senior. So I get all the credit for coming out first and being the first one out there, but he actually beat me to the commitment. So whenever I get that question, he always brings that up. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool, but yeah, it's great to have all these PA guys out here now, especially.
Did Kemerer or did Young committing there, did that affect your decision at all? You guys are pretty close, right? Both from Western Pennsylvania, workout partners.
Yeah. I mean, it probably had a little bit of an influence. I mean, I tried to keep my decision for what was best for me and think about it for myself. But, when I finally did make the decision to commit there, knowing that he was going to be there, it made it that much better. And, we kind of got that full year there before I left for Iowa, where I could talk to him about being out there and being partners and stuff. And it was cool to have another PA guy going out there with me, knowing that in advance. But obviously when I went through the decision, I tried to keep it pretty neutral and, make what was the best decision for me, not necessarily because someone else was going there, but because it was the best thing for me.
No, that makes total sense.
Right.
Last year, obviously, was difficult for you. I don't know, maybe it wasn't difficult. I would assume it was difficult. Being your guy that's a mat rat, you had to sit out the whole year with some injuries. What did you learn in that year? What was different? I mean, that's got to be the first time you didn't wrestle since you're, 4 or 5 years old?
Yeah, it was the longest I've gone without wrestling probably since I started wrestling. So it was definitely an adjustment. I think the big thing is just learning and being on the mat and wrestling is just something that I'm just so used to doing on a daily basis. And it's kind of weird, but you can't just get your hands on a guy and start wrestling. It was just a weird thing for me. So it was tough, but at the same time, I felt like I did get a lot better in that year. Just had to be in different ways. I got to watch a lot of wrestling. I got to coach. I got to see from a different perspective. I said in an interview, a month or two ago, it was cool too, because you hear a lot about guys who, they're in the wrestling grind, and then they're done with the sport, and they're kind of like get a year or two out, and then they're like, man, I miss it so much. And, they just want to be back in the sport and back in coaching and all that stuff. And kind of got to see a side of that, not being in the lineup, not being wrestling every day. Got to see a little bit what my life was like without wrestling. And, don't get me wrong, it's still great, and I got a lot of great people and everything, and I could still have fun and stuff, but it's a lot better with wrestling. I definitely learned that throughout that year.
How long were you off from the time you got surgery to the time you got back on the mat, to get a hard drill?
Yeah, so I got my surgery right after Thanksgiving, so coming up on a year ago now, and I think I got back on the mat in maybe mid-June or something like that. So it was a good, probably close to 7 months there, I think. And, it probably felt twice that long, honestly.
What did it feel like to get back? Did you have any jitters? Were you just like overcome with excitement, nerves? I mean, walk me through that, your first day or first few days back.
Yeah, I was really excited. I mean, I don't think there were any nerves or hesitation. I knew I had to be smart, and, the coaches and, our trainers and stuff, they did a real good job of starting slow and building. I was doing a lot of wrestling specific conditioning and strength before I was actually on the mat. And then, getting back on the mat, started out doing just drills that, were safe, kept me working hard and getting better, but being smart. So, I mean, I remember that first day getting on the mat. It was during our summer camps, and we kind of have a training cycle there. And I was just so excited to be on the mat. And I think it was like maybe 23 minutes or something like that was like my full workout. But I was super excited. So it was definitely, it was all excitement.
Have you had any pause going through it where something feels a little bit off and you panic or think something's wrong, or you just trust that your body's ready to go?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I feel really good, and people ask me about, how I'm feeling all the time. I mean, I always get that question, but I've been feeling really good. And, honestly, I think another reason that it was good is that, I had to kind of, I'm getting a little bit older. I got to wrestle smart and wrestle in positions that are going to keep me safe, and, kind of wrestle that wide open PA style, scrambling. And, I do a lot of like pulling in shots, sometimes even from my belly. And that's the kind of stuff on your shoulders and knees that sometimes can wear on it. So it's just being smart with that stuff, and, being fundamental, and then having that stuff as well. So, as long as I'm moving my feet and, wrestling in good position, I honestly feel great.
I don't want to say that was what made you famous, but I've seen you sucking a leg stretched out 1,000,000 times. You remind me of Jake Herbert. I mean, it's just toughness to go into that, but I guess if you can finish clean, you'd rather do that. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll always have that quality, and I can go to that, but, it's nice to get a good setup and a good shot and good finish. That's probably a little cleaner and better on my shoulders. Yeah, no doubt. Wrestling Nomad mentioned today, he didn't tag you, but he asked if Michael Kemerer graduated. I don't know what he was getting at, but someone mentioned yes. I think it was one of the Hawkeye fans. So I guess set the record straight. Did you graduate, and are you in grad school right now? Yep. So I graduated 4 years last spring, finance degree, and then obviously would have definitely had the 1 year and then get next year too. So having 4 semesters left, I wanted to keep my education going. So I'm it's like a Master of Finance program now here. So I'm doing that, and it's going well. I like it. It's between you and Megaludis. If you want to have a wrestler handle your money, Franklin Regional. Yeah, exactly. That's what it's looking like. So with that, I mean, that's a very advanced degree. There's a lot of things you can do with it, and obviously do well with it. Do you intend to use that immediately after graduating? Have you given thought into competing more or coaching, or is it too early for you to really have a plan? Yeah, I mean, I know that stuff's down the road, and I mean, the way I look at it right now is, this year my goal is go out and win a national title, and win individually and as a team, and then when next year comes, do the same thing. That's obviously the goal. So right now I'm just focused on that stuff, and then after college, my goals are at the highest level. I mean, coming to the University of Iowa, that's kind of preached on a daily basis. So I think about wrestling for those world and Olympic titles, and then having the finance background and the degree, I think it's going to be helpful. And, maybe in the future, want to do something with that. We'll see. I definitely am interested in that stuff too, but I guess just the way I am and the way I'm wired, it's just right now, it's just, wrestling such a big part of it that it's hard to imagine me not being involved with wrestling. So I definitely want to keep competing until I know when it's time that I want to be done. On the international scene, do you have a weight class picked out, or is that to be determined? Because you don't seem like a guy that, I don't know, maybe you do cut a lot of weight, but you continually grow. Do you think you can get up to 86, or would 74 be more natural for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's tough, especially, these Olympic years. That's a big jump. As far as this year is concerned, I'm just focused on the college season and NCAAs and then going to go from there. But, right now, 100% of my effort is into the college season, 174 pounds, and we'll go from there.
There's been a lot of talk this year about the Hawkeye team. I know that a lot of people in Iowa won't ever say that they've circled a year or they've planned for a year or anything like that. I'm sure you guys train to win every year, but from a fan's perspective, it looks like this is probably the best shot that you guys have had in a few years. What would it mean to win that team title? Obviously, you come from a very good high school program that won a lot. I mean, is that something that's really important to you? And does it give it any extra luster doing it with a bunch of Pennsylvania guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. Just coming from that successful high school team and, successful club and everything like that. It just makes the sport all that much better. I mean, it's an individual sport, but, you're going in there practicing and training with these guys every day. And, I saw that in high school, winning those titles. I mean, that's something that, you remember for the rest of your life. And, it'd be really exciting to be a part of that here, especially, obviously there's a tradition and we haven't won and, it's been, I think 9 years and, it's Iowa. We're about winning, right? So getting back to that, it would be huge. And it starts with every day in the room, us working hard and, doing what's best for us individually. And, we always say that if we go out and take care of business at 10 weights, that kind of takes care of itself. So, but yeah, it would be awesome. It's definitely, we're definitely super excited.
If you do win a title, are you going to request to throw out a first pitch at a Pittsburgh Pirate game?
Oh, I think I'd have to. I mean, I see my first pitch didn't go very well. I don't know if you saw that. So I threw out a pitch after I All-American the first year, and I bounced it, and everyone was giving me a hard time. So then I got another shot after I All-American my sophomore year. So, yeah, I mean, if you get the title, I guess you got to move up onto something a little bigger. So we'll see. I got to take care of the wrestling first, though.
So does that mean if I ask you about the nutting or Bob Nutting that you'll sing his praises on here just to get that shot, or are you going to kind of keep your opinions to yourself?
I think I'm just going to have to keep my opinions quiet on that one because you probably don't want me to get into that.
Cool, man. So, we always ask people to finish up to, give your pitch on the University of Iowa. I know there's a lot of opinions out there. I think that you guys have done a really good job kind of squashing those a little bit, showing a little bit more personality. But is there anything about the university that you want to get out there that maybe the regular Joe doesn't know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I think you hear about all the time, especially with guys like Spencer, he's a huge ambassador for our program and talking about it. But, we got a really close group of guys and, we work hard and we have super high goals, but we have a lot of fun doing it. And, I think we've proven now with, all these guys coming from, a state like PA or coming from states around the country that, you can go somewhere far away. You can go to Iowa from a state farther away and, make it home. And it definitely feels like home. And if you ask, the other PA guys on the team, they tell you the same thing. It feels like home. We got a great culture going. I said in another interview in the past, we all live super close to each other. We're hanging out all the time. It's just it's a great time. And I love it. And also just to talk about our program and the coaches. I mean, super, super good coaches. Everyone knows that. And just super, they care so much about the athletes. And they really do. They do a great job. And just thankful. Yeah, it's a great program.
Great, man. We definitely appreciate having you on. Sorry that Tristan had to run, but yeah, thanks for your time, Michael. We'll be watching you this year, and good luck this week versus UTC.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, that was great talking to Michael Kemerer. We're certainly looking forward to watching him wrestle this year and looking forward to the action this weekend. So, hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for everyone listening. Looking forward to talking to you again next week.